the blind and halt and lame. They have come to thy door, Lord. They have come to thy door. Give them an audience, Lord. They have heard thy name, the blind and halt and lame. They have heard thy name, the blind and halt and lame. Those who are in despair, to whom will they go? Those who are in despair, to whom will they go? They have come to thy door, Lord. They have come to thy door. Give them an audience, Lord. They have heard thy name, the blind and halt and lame. They have heard thy name, the blind and halt and lame. Those who are drowned in sin, wipe thou their tears. Those who are drowned in sin, wipe thou their tears. They have no one, Lord. They have no one. Do not turn them away. They have heard thy name, the blind and halt and lame. They have heard thy name, the blind and halt and lame.
This is a reading from The New Path by Swami Kriyananda. On January 5th, the disciples gathered at Mount Washington to celebrate Paramhansa Yogananda's birthday. As the function began, we went up to him individually and knelt for his blessing. After a banquet later, he spoke of his longing to see an awakening of divine love throughout the world. In a more personal vein, he continued, I never dreamt during my first years of teaching in this country that such a fellow feeling in God's love would be possible here. It exists only because you have lived up to the ideals that I cherished and for which I lived in the company of my Guru. Friendship in God surely was the key to our relationship with him. It implied no easy-going relationship, such as worldly people enjoy with one another, but demanded of us, rather, at the utmost that we had to give. The friendship our Guru extended to us was to our souls. To reciprocate in kind meant to strive unceasingly to meet him on that divine level. Those who clung to the desires of ego gratification could not coax from him a compromise in the pure quality of his friendship. If a disciple flattered him, Master would gaze at him quietly, as if to say, I will not desecrate the love I bear you by accepting this level of communication. Always he held out to us the highest ideal to which each of us might aspire. Such perfect love imposes the most demanding of all disciplines, for ultimately it asks nothing less of the disciple than the total gift to God of himself. I used to pray to Master, "Teach me to love you as you love me." Chatting with a group of us one day after hours in the main office, he looked at me penetratingly and said, "How can the little cup expect to hold the whole ocean of love? First, it has to expand and become as big as the ocean." The Indian scriptures state that when the soul has released its hold on egoic individuality, it merges into the ocean of spirit, becoming one with it. While most of us loved Master from our varying degrees of ego identification, his love for us was without limit, indeed cosmic. To ordinary human beings, such love is inconceivable. "I killed Yogananda long ago," he used to say. "No one dwells in this temple now but God." In essence, our relationship with him was not only a friendship in God, but with God, whose love alone he expressed to us. Always with firm resolution, he turned toward the divine in all the love we gave him. Whenever we touched his feet in the manner customary among Indian disciples to their guru, he held his right hand reverently at his forehead, extending the fingers upward to indicate that he directed our devotion to God. And if anyone's affection for him displayed the slightest attachment, he often became distant and reserved until that person had understood it was God's love alone that he extended to us.
All your children, mother, call you, knowing not it's you they call. Some through miss of their unknowing, bruised and hurting when they fall. Turn away, but who can leave you? You, the mother of us all. If the child forgets its mother, will she coldly turn away? Wise or foolish, we're your children. Guide us, Mother, if we stray. Those whose hearts are torn with anguish lack the power your name to call. Heal their wounds, Ma, soothe their sorrows. You, the mother of us all. Heal their wounds, Ma, soothe their sorrows. You, the mother of us all.
Yogananda is called a Prem avatar, an avatar of divine love. And so really, as we're listening to these words of the songs and the chants and the reading, it is, to a large degree, what he came to teach us. I couldn't hear the recordings that Navashan played. I was in the back room, but at the end of meditation, but I heard one of the lines when Master said, "I came to love you as God loved you, without desire." That was so beautiful, without any of his own desire or need, that he really came in to teach us the true meaning of love. That is, that which would lead to our soul's expansion. He didn't love us in a personal way, as Swamiji was saying in the path. In fact, quite the contrary. He loved God in us. That's what he saw. Swami said somewhere in one of his talks or readings, he said he was no friend of the ego because he just would have none of that. He was going to be God, loving God. And Swami said he loved in a way that would have you feel so powerful because he was seeing the divine in you. That was all that he would relate to. He loved with deep respect, with deep power, and with deep wisdom. And whoever was in his presence who could receive that, they could take it all in. Swamiji said looking into Master's eyes was just like looking into infinity and a sea of love. He also came here and really introduced to us, to all of us, the notion of holding God as Divine Mother, which was new and was such a beautiful gift to all of us, because when we think of Mother and when we pray all the time to Divine Mother or hear these beautiful songs about Divine Mother, it touches our heart in a way. It goes right to that place of deep longing and deep yearning. And it is that yearning, exactly, that place in our heart that keeps us moving forward on this path, that keeps us wanting more. And it's what he did. He came in as an incarnation of divine love, and he came in and helped us learn how to speak to God as the mother in us, and to even see the mother in him, even though obviously he was that perfect blend of male and female. But again, a Prem avatar. I wanted to read God's Boatman, which I know we sing and we read a lot, but as I was looking through Whispers today, I was so struck by what a beautiful statement of God's love this is for us. This is such a beautiful, in the beginning of this book, Master calls these answered prayers. So he's really saying, you read these prayers, they're answered. That's the energy that I've put into them. When I was reading God's Boatman today, well, I'll let you listen. I felt like he was speaking to me personally. And let's all try and listen with that attitude right now, receiving his love through his own words. I want to ply my boat many times across the gulf after death and return to Earth's shores from my home in space. I want to load my boat with all those waiting, thirsty ones who have been left behind, that I may carry them to the opalescent pool of iridescent joy. There, where my Father distributes his all-quenching liquid peace, oh, I will come back again and again, crossing 1,000,000 crags of suffering. With bleeding feet I will come, if need be 1,000,000,000,000 times, as long as I know that one stray brother is left behind. I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show others how they too can free themselves. I want thine everlasting happiness, but I want also to share it with others, that all my brothers may find the way into happiness forever and forever in thee. Now let's take this beautiful statement of Master's undying, unconditional, ever-present love for us into a few minutes of meditation.
Whether You know, everything about the spiritual path has to be about love. There's really no other possible power that can hold you to it. You know, it's the distinction between willpower and willingness. We think that the spiritual path needs willpower, and it's helpful. But a more dynamic way to think about it is that the spiritual path needs willingness. It needs the willingness to simply do what is required in order to get from delusion to freedom. And we can make ourselves do things if you have enough willpower and enough sort of determination to overcome your own natural inclinations. You can go to war with yourself and sometimes dominate yourself. But on the very, very long rhythm that's really required to attain God realization, that wears thin and usually wears out. But if we love something, then even if at times we become rebellious against it, which in friendship, in parenting, in marriage, we may love the people who are close to us wholeheartedly, but nonetheless, it's still even not easy. But that commitment of love makes it impossible to quit. And it isn't just people that we love, it's a vibration of pure truth. It's a vibration of beauty. It's the experience of a clear conscience and knowing that you're doing exactly what you were born to do. Swamiji once has always been amused by some of the quick fixes that are represented as teaching. You know, just accept yourself as you are, just love yourself as you are. Swami said the only path to self-acceptance is a clear conscience. It's actually an extremely interesting statement. You know, as long as we are violating our highest principles, we will always be uncomfortable, and we ought to be uncomfortable. That doesn't mean we should become discouraged, but it means we should not be content. Because we love something, we are devoted to something that we have experienced, that we have read about, that we have been told about by people we believe, that we have glimpsed through intuition, and the satisfaction of that love is so much greater than anything else that there's just simply no giving up. And in the end, and in the middle and in the beginning too, it all comes down to not giving up. Just as simple as that. Because, you see, this is the one human endeavor in which there's absolutely no chance of failure. We are made from the consciousness of the divine, and sooner or later we will grow tired of everything that we are experiencing that is not a pure reflection of that divinity. How long it takes us to grow tired of that, that's up to us. But all we're doing is passing a little bit of time, experiencing something that is less than we will ultimately experience. But it's essential that we understand that there's no choice here. I can lie down for a long time and refuse to move. I can have as many hissy fits as I want to have. I can be rebellious, I can be angry, I can think everybody around me is wrong, all of that. But some part of us, in the end, needs to always remember that I have to get over this, you know? Because nobody suffers but me. And how long do I want to suffer? And that's the kind of perseverance. Swami says success on the path depends first on knowing that first he says it depends on absolute self-honesty. He said just being willing to see ourselves as we really are and not flinch, not become discouraged, not become angry, not try to bully ourselves. Just, well, there it is. These are still my desires. And that's what you really just have to say. It doesn't matter if I read it in the books that I shouldn't feel this way. Whenever someone says to me, because people do this when they come for counseling, I know it's stupid to feel this way. I said, no, actually it isn't stupid at all. You've spent incarnations getting this deluded, you know? You've applied your keenest intelligence and your best will. There was nothing stupid at all about getting you to here. And it's not going to go away just by insulting it. You know, it's just the way you feel. And, you know, I want, I need, I have to have. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm jealous, I'm whatever. Not proud of it, but there it is. Absolute self-honesty is the first step. Second step is regular practice. And that doesn't just mean Kriya practice or even meditation. It means regularly participating in the vibration that reminds you of what you love. Re-immersing yourself in the vibration that you love so that you won't forget that it's even out there. You see, that's how people leave the path. They get so far away from the vibration that they can no longer remember that it even exists for a time. Then the last point that Swami said is actually my favorite. You must realize that being on the spiritual path is a matter of life and death. In other words, this is not a casual, maybe sometimes hobby. This is the only reality there is. I have a wonderful quote from Mark Twain, of all people, that I saw somewhere. He said, the first most important day is the day you were born. The second most important day is the day you realize why. Life or death. We were put here to love God. And all we have to do is just keep that thought uppermost. And every time we get discouraged, lazy, crummy, depressed, whatever we might get, disinterested, just wait it out. I always say delusion is limited, bliss is eternal. So no matter how long delusion lasts, in the end it has to give way to eternity.
I was made for thee. I was made for thee alone. I was made for dropping flowers of devotion gently at thy feet on the altar of the morning. My hands were made to serve thee willingly, to remain folded in adoration, waiting for thy coming, and when thou comest, to bathe thy feet with my tears. My voice was made to sing thy glory. My feet were made to seek thy temples everywhere. My eyes were made a chalice to hold thy burning love, and the wisdom falling from thy nature's hands. My ears were made to catch the music of thy footsteps echoing through the halls of space, and to hear thy divine melodies flowing through all heart tracts of devotion. My lips were made to breathe forth thy praises and thine intoxicating inspirations. My love was made to throw incandescent searchlight flames, to find thee hidden in the forest of my desires. My heart was made to respond to thy call alone. My soul was made to be the channel through which thy love might flow uninterruptedly into all thirsty souls.
Of laughter,
There's a saying in India that all of Krishna's soldiers looked like Krishna, which is not to say that they actually did, but they all did. But what the meaning of that is that when you are in tune with the same consciousness, you begin to resemble each other vibrationally, even physically, but also vibrationally. You know that couples who live together for a long time often begin to look alike, even though they don't look anything alike. It's a kind of a strange thing. Of course, the children you give birth to naturally resemble you, but married couples don't have the same genetic structure. But it's very interesting because they get in tune with the same things and they begin to look a lot the same. You see pictures of Swami with Jyotish, and they have a certain physical resemblance. Jyotish is his spiritual successor. They have a certain physical resemblance, but what you see is so much more than that, because there is an attunement one to the other, and as a consequence, they just look the same. I've seen it. I'm in this situation. I sit behind the choir, but you all sit in front of it. And in other circumstances, I've sat in front of the choir. Often, Ananda choirs will have widely varying physical types and ages, just people looking very different one from another. And often the costumes are quite different one from another. And a motley crew is probably sometimes what you might think. But when they begin to sing, it's actually really interesting, because they all begin to look alike. And you find it's difficult actually even to tell age, even though there's clear and unmistakable signs of age and even gender. You can't quite see what it is, because they all literally, with the singing, but much more deeply, they get in tune with the same vibration. And we are nothing but a vibration of consciousness. And so whatever we're in tune with, that's what we become. I used to have fun making faces in the mirror, imagining if I'd lived a very different life than the life I'd lived. You know, one of anger or regret or dullness, or just all the different things that you could be, which, you know, you see examples, you see brilliant examples all around. How could these same features have developed if I was involved in a different vibration than the one I'm in? Well, at Ananda, on Master's path, we have a very, let me think at what I want to say with this. Traditionally, in Kali Yuga religion, especially in Catholic monastic orders, which in the Western world tends to epitomize spiritual dedication. We don't really have another model for absolute dedication except for Catholic monastic orders. So to a very large extent, they define serious spirituality. And the idea being, in such a place, one is supposed to overcome one's individual self-will. They may use the word ego. They don't use it perhaps in exactly the technical sense that we use it, but it's the same thought. But the way it's traditionally been done is to suppress it, to train people to be obedient without thinking, even to do things that are contrary to common sense, merely in order to get out of the habit of making your own decisions. Swami Kriyananda and Master himself set us at first what seems like a contradictory example of how to overcome the ego. Someone was talking to me today about being too ambitious. I said, Swami Kriyananda was the most ambitious person I have ever known. And I said, I lament the lack of ambition around me and in myself, rather than feeling there's too much of it. But he was ambitious to serve God. He was ambitious to communicate what he had learned from his master with anyone who would hear him. And he was driven, he was beyond ambitious. He was absolutely unwilling to rest as long as there was breath in his body and one more song could be written, one more book, one more encouraging word offered. And he was so dynamic in that, many people were just dismissed him as egoic because they couldn't put together that much energy and that much willpower except in a model that was self-interested. So we have to understand that what's being asked of us is by no means passive and by no means uncreative or unthinking or anything like that. Just the opposite, because we have to look like our path looks. We are Krishna's soldiers, we are Swami's soldiers, we're Master's disciples, and Master himself. He came to this country from his own country, sent by his Master, and unrelentingly, determined to conquer with self-realization this materialistic West. And he was unrelenting in his efforts. In Durga Mata's book about Master, she just talks about how he was always in a hurry. And it sort of annoyed them all, that he was always in such a hurry. But he only had so many minutes. His life wasn't even going to be that long. And Swami was tiring. He described once when he was we were all working so much. He said, sometimes I would see in your eyes, he said about me, a look of desperate fatigue. Which was how I would just feel like, can't I go home now? Must we just keep on? Of course I enjoyed it. But he just pushed us and pushed us. But it wasn't ego. In fact, it was the opposite, you see. It was, I am here to serve God. What difference does it make? What difference does it make whether my job is congenial, whether the people around me appreciate me, whether I get to express myself, whether it's my first choice, any of these things. Of course, energy flows better if you're doing something that is harmonious to your nature. And Swamiji was always encouraging us to go with our strengths. But what he was encouraging us above all to do was to put out energy. Not for self, but for self-realization. And in service to a great cause. Swamiji and Master both gave their lives for this. Just gave their lives on a level that very few people have the power to do. That happened to Swamiji in front of several thousand people, and he just got sterner and sterner listening to it ring, and then he finally reached into his pocket and it was his. There was nothing could be done at that point. The poor man who called him was afraid to call him for years. After that, talk about bad karma. But what I was saying is, we have to model ourselves after our own path. And that is dynamic, unrelenting, self-mastery through service to others, with every ounce of talent, creativity, and intelligence we have, but with God as the doer. Is it simple? Yes. Is it easy? No. Is it worth doing? It's the only game in town. You know, everything that we want to be, we can be. Swamiji he would tell us so many different times. He would make a list of all the things he'd done in the last 40 minutes since we last saw him, you know, all the books he'd written like this. He would bring pieces of paper. He would have Lakshman give him paper. Have I forgotten anything? And he would just make these lists. Some people who didn't understand him, they just couldn't bear it. What a boaster, what an egotist. But he would always then say, you know, I didn't really think I could do it, but I knew Master could, and I just put my attention at the spiritual high, and I just prayed to Master, and then there was the book, and there were the songs, and he was telling us how we had to live. He wasn't talking about himself. He didn't have anything to prove. He said, that which I do, ye shall do in greater things, and here is how you do it. You put your attention at the spiritual eye, and you say, Master, I can't do it, but you can. You know, absolute ambition to be an instrument of God. You know, and the reward of it is the experience of it. The channel is blessed by that which flows through it. And it's never more true than when we are giving ourselves wholeheartedly to share the light. However humble or grand that may be, just share the light and know that it's not yours, but it's yours to give. Now we come to the part of our evening which is all about the vows. Vows are always, every spiritual path involves some kind of vows. And vows are, you know, people have different relationship to them. Many people imagine that a vow is a statement of what you are. And some people feel very nervous about taking vows because they look at these grand ideas. I've taken the vow as a Nayaswami. I no longer exist as a separate entity. That's what it is. I said. I actually said that. I no longer exist as a separate entity, but offer myself unreservedly into thy great ocean of awareness. Well, I can't possibly state that as a fact. It has to be stated as an aspiration and a direction in which we're going. The fact of the matter is, we don't take vows for things that we already are. You know, I don't really have to vow not to murder and not to take cocaine. But some people do, because for them it's their aspiration to rise to that. So when we take these vows, the grandness of them is their power. And the grandness of saying, this is who I am going to become. And this is the path that I'm walking, and this is what it looks like. And even if we fall off from time to time or fail to live up to it completely, the mere fact of saying it over and over again has tremendous power to transform us into what we wish to become. Swami Kriyananda said, if you're going to judge yourself, and then he said, which I don't advise doing, you must realize that whatever you are now is already behind you. Because we are simply a flow of energy. So by the time you're standing somewhere and can look at the river at this point, it's going to be going past you. He said, so the only way to judge who you are is by what you aspire to become. Because that's where your energy is going and that's who you will be. So in this spirit, every Master's birthday, we rededicate ourselves according to the different vows that are appropriate for every person who's here. And a few people take vows for the first time, and we offer them a blessing when they do for our Sevaka order, which we'll explain slightly when we get there. But the others are an affirmation mostly of what you already have become. It's also, God has everything but our love. What do you give the Guru for his birthday? You know, there's all those jokes, the perfect present for the Buddhist monk. Just what I wanted, nothing. Right? But the Master incarnated for us to learn to love him. So bring him your heart. And for those of you who are new to this path or on another path that is unrelated to the rest of the vows that are taken, offered, we have what we call an affirmation of the truth seeker, which simply says, I will seek the truth wherever it comes to me. And so our first vow that we offer is this truth seeker's affirmation. So what we would like to do is to invite any of you who would like to take that. You should have received a copy of it so you'll know what you're getting into. And if you would like to come forward.